All right, we're back playing some buy, sell, hold, looking at two running backs, again, that could maybe go up in value. They could plummet. They could be for rebuilding teams, contending teams. So we're going to look at them and see if whether we would buy, sell, or hold. And we're starting off with Javonte Williams, kind of the poster boy of the volatility, especially in the running back room or the running backs for Dynasty, but just in Dynasty in general. Was RB2 at one point heading into the 2022 season, I believe. And he's all the way down, according to Keep Trade Cut, as the RB24. He's going in the mid to late 8th round in startups, Superflex, as the RB21. And then some value there, or some trades that are considered equal value, a mid-2024 second or an early 2025 second. You see the stats there, 2021, averaged 10.8 points per game. That was his rookie year, RB17. And then it says 2022, but that's actually 2023. Last year, averaged 9.7 and was RB30 in points per game. Both those RB17 and 30 are for points per game in half PPR. 2022 did not include because he got injured 4 games in. So Brian, Javonte, buy, sell, or hold?
I kind of like a lot of the sides of this sort of equation, I guess. Like, I think it's hard to really like hold last year necessarily against him because he came off such a devastating injury the year before in 22. You know, like it was multiple ligaments. Like he was just all kinds of jacked up, and I think we might have, it's not rose-colored glasses, but something to the effect of like, well, Breece Hall did it. You know, it's like, well, Breece Hall is, or Javonte Williams is not Breece Hall. You know, like the way Breece Hall came back, like that's definitely the outlier. Usually, it does take, a full. It's not the season after these big injuries to these running backs where these guys like become back to their full strength. So. Yeah, like hard to hold last year against him. He does have, like he was not picked by this coaching regime. He's not part of a Sean Payton's plan necessarily, like from the get-go because he was already on the team when Payton got there. So you can paint that narrative, but also, like we've seen what running backs do in a Sean Payton offense. And like we know this guy is talented. We just haven't really seen it a whole lot since his rookie year, and even then, that wasn't like some amazing like, oh, this is the dude. Like, I mean, he was definitely very highly regarded. So, all right, very long-winded again. As far as like, I don't think I'm selling him for a mid-second. I'd rather just hold him and see what happens. I don't know if he's ever really going to go up in value necessarily. But I think that he could be a low end number 2 running back on your team pretty easily, and he definitely has the upside to be to get higher up there. I mean, he's going to be working with Bo Nix, Mr. Short area target kind of thing. We know Javonte can catch. Obviously there's some other running backs on the team that can catch too, but overall, I think he's a solid hold. I mean, if I'm trying to acquire him, I'm definitely not paying more than that, So that's why I was kind of saying, like, I kind of like all sides of this equation except for the sell. Like, I don't think selling him for a second at this point. I mean, it kind of depends on, like, if you're in your draft and let's say like Trey Benson's sitting there or something like that, it's like, oh yeah, you definitely do that. Even though I think he's going a little bit earlier in the second than maybe where the pick that you're going to get for Javonte, but I don't know. What do you think?
I'll hold. I have a weird feeling about Javonte this year is going to be like really, really good for whatever reason. It's funny how we are like, and I think about this with a lot of situations. Like we told ourselves going into 2023, Javonte's going to struggle. He's coming back from a major knee injury. We know he's going to have a down year. Or JSN, he's going to the Seahawks. He's going to He's going to not probably have a big year in 2023 because Metcalf and Lockett are there. And we know all that, and we tell ourselves that. Jameson Williams tore his ACL in January. His rookie year is a wash. And then we let that affect the rankings severely. Not so much with Javonte. He didn't fall off too much from when he got injured to playing poorly last year. But we even though we tell ourselves that, we still let it affect us. And you're right about Breece Hall did well, or Adrian Peterson ran for 2,000 yards when he came back from an ACL. And it's those guys are different. Everyone recovers differently. Maybe Javonte's injury was way worse. But we do wish we would have saw something, the last 4 weeks. If he just had a good last 4 weeks, or just some kind of stretch where it's okay, this is the Javonte. Because coming out of college, he was awesome. He broke the I think he has the highest ever missed tackles forced, according to PFF, in the history of college football since they've been charting it for 10 years. More than Bijan and more than Breece Hall and more than all these other guys, Saquon, all these guys. We saw it the first year, although he was in that literal 50-50 split with Melvin Gordon. But I just have this sneaky feeling he's going to be really good. But also, I'm not going to overpay just because I think that, because there's a very good chance he's just not that good. And you mentioned it, the coaching staff being different. That's probably what scares me the most. If it was the same coaching staff that took Javonte, I'd believe in it more. But now you have, Julian McLaughlin there, who was, taking some work from him. Samaje Perine was kind of, used as the pass catcher. I think you'd be surprised. People in general are surprised when they hear Samaje Perine had 50 catches last year. Not a lot of people would guess that. They drafted Audric Estime. Real quick. They even have a undrafted rookie running back out of Memphis who caught 70, 60 passes in college that I think is a sneaky stash on your dynasty teams, because he could be that. So go ahead. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say, kind of to what you were saying about Samaje Perine with the catches and everything. A couple of things about that, and I think this is a really important point to make, is so Javonte still out-targeted Perine just by 2. But that's neither here nor there, The point is, they were throwing to the running backs like crazy,
Yes.
It was them and the Jets, basically. 153 targets in Denver to the running back position, 149 for the Jets, and the next team after that, they're 20 targets behind that, and there's not even a whole lot of those guys, so they're definitely very much working in their running backs in the pass catching game. I don't think Javonte is going to be the workhorse, but I don't know if he necessarily has to be either. He's going to get his 200 carries, and 50 targets, and it's that's a solid ass running back too, if the team is a little bit more efficient, and I think that can definitely happen, because I don't think Russell Wilson was I've heard the analogy. It's he was the square peg that they were trying to shove into the round hole, because they weren't necessarily playing to his game. He was basically, Peyton was no, do this, and that's not what Wilson was good at, kind of a thing. And I don't know how true that was. I try not to watch too many Denver games, just out of to keep my sanity, I think I have better things to do with my life. But in general, I think, the point is they're going to throw to their running backs a lot. We've seen it in the Sean Payton offense time and time again in the past, including last year. And Javonte is going to be involved in that, he's going to be a part of it. Whether or not he is the leader or anything, I don't think it really matters. I think we're talking about him as a low end number 2 running back. So
32.1% was the percentage of targets that went to running backs. Next was the Jets, but they were down at 26.5. So pretty big drop off. And that, again, like you said, that's not a fluke. Go look at the Saints percentages throughout the 2010s, and they're always in the top 5. Yeah, I guess the biggest concern is it's probably going to be kind of like a Mark Ingram, Alvin Kamara split, a Pierre Thomas and Darren Sproles split. And when you look at it, it's like, all right, that means if Javonte is that Pierre Thomas or Mark Ingram, he's probably going to get 1,000, 1,100 yards. He's going to need the touchdowns. And we don't think this offense is going to be that good to be getting the touchdown. So, but I think he's a hold. He's kind of, I like him in like best ball. I like him in redraft as like my RB3 or 4. Just with that potential of like, what if he is just really good? You know, what if he's recovered? So still only 24, like literally just turned 24. So even if I do think its value can go up if he has a really good season, whether he stays on this, the Broncos or not. So the next guy was a guy we thought everyone thought was going to smash last year. Tony Pollard, already 27 years old, is keep trade cuts RB33. He's going in the startup at the mid to late 9th round as the RB26. And he's essentially worth like a mid to late 2nd round in this year's rookie draft and a mid 2025 second. You see his numbers there. Had a big 2022 when he was sharing with Zeke, was the RB8 in points per game. Still a RB2 last year at 11.5. We just all thought it was going to be more. 11.5 points, half PPR. Buy, sell, or hold for Tony Pollard, Brian?
I think he's a solid buy at 210 this year, or a mid-second next year. I'm sure a lot of people heard the narrative about he came off a pretty serious. Was it a knee injury or no? He broke
his leg.
Yeah. At the end of 22, and he kind of said, I think it wasn't until like week 10 or maybe even like somewhere around there, like 2/3 of the way through the season or whatever, where he was like, I'm finally starting to feel like 100%, that was last year. And, obviously, like, I think there is some concerns, an older running back who's never really carried the load, like all by himself, going to a new team and whatnot. But I think if you're thinking Tony Pollard's going to be the workhorse, I think you're kind of looking at him wrong. I think he's a good combination back. And I think the team has even said, him and Tajay Spears, like they're kind of interchangeable. And that's not the worst thing in the world, like you don't want Tony Pollard like getting 300 carries or anything, like he doesn't seem to like hold up with that. But
he did in 2022.
Yeah. I mean, he can be efficient like without that, I think he's going to be a good option in general for we were just talking about him, Levis. I think he's a solid player. Yeah, he's getting up there a little bit. Usually this is you don't necessarily want running backs when they start getting a little up there. But I think he's got another solid year or two at least in the books, and so for a late second, I think that's a solid buy.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I do think I agree with you. It was a disappointment. I think it's a little bit overblown. Not overblown, but at worst, it's going to be a 50-50 split with Tajay Spears. I think it's going to be more 60-40 or 65-35, in my opinion. That's why I'm kind of out on Spears a little bit. They're actually going right around the same in startup drafts. But because it's a new coaching staff, that makes me afraid of Spears. They went out, they paid Pollard before, that was the legal tampering period, right? So that was like before free agency started. They went out there and made it a point. I think he was the second running back to sign behind Swift. He's the 9th highest paid running back, 9th or 10th highest paid running back in the NFL. They went out and got him and paid him. So they think he's going to be good. So it was week 11 heading into the Panthers game when he said he finally felt back. And, is that him just covering his ass a little bit because he was not playing well?
I'm sure
you look
at
part of it, yeah. But you look at the numbers, he was RB15 from week 11 to 18, so he was better than, where he finished. He was more closer to a high-end RB2. He was PFF's highest graded rusher during that stretch, 11 to 18, which, doesn't always translate to fantasy points, but, it was better. And then you just look at his yards per attempt, over 4, and from weeks 11 on. So, and then I think it was, let's see, I'm just double checking here. It was, it was under 4 from weeks 1 to 10. Not a huge difference. It's like 3.9 to 4.1 or something. But a difference. So yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think he is a buy. Now, when we say buy, I don't really want to buy him right now. I want to buy him week 3 if I can, or even at the beginning of the season. Like, I want to avoid training camp with running backs if I can, these guys who, if Pollard does get an ACL tear in August, his value's gone, right? So I kind of at least avoid training camp and like, all right, you made it through training camp. Now I'll try and acquire you type of thing. So
yeah, but if your team is all of a sudden terrible because you traded away your 210, like I think your team was already terrible. Like I think the cost benefit there, like I totally agree with you in the sense like buying running backs right now is kind of scary, but if he does start playing well, first of all, you can't use your 210 from this year during third week in the season, right? No, so I think you're thinking more of the 2025 mid-second. But if he starts playing well, you're not going to be able to get him for that, And if he's not playing well, you're not going to want him. So I really feel like you have to pull the trigger, definitely before the season starts. Like there is always that risk with running backs in training camp, but I think the upside for Pollard far outweighs the 210. So I'm totally fine pulling the trigger right now.
Yeah, no, I agree. And he was eighth most in receptions last year for running backs. Didn't do much with it. 311 yards on 55 catches is not great, but let's just say that bumps up like 100 or so, and then you feel better about it. So yeah. So Javonte, we have a hold. Pollard, we have a buy with a late second, mid-second, 2025. Both guys, I think, could be top 15, top 12 guys, and I wouldn't be super shocked. Most likely they're RB2s, but I wouldn't be shocked if they were high-end RB2s or low-end RB1s. So any last words on these guys?
No, nailed it.
All right. Well, we'll be back. Make sure to like and subscribe. Put out content all year long. We'll be back looking at a couple receivers. Catch you guys all in the next video.